What's going on, hikers? In today's video, I'm going to be hitting you with a bunch of tenting mistakes that you should not be making, whether you're just out camping or maybe you're hiking and backpacking and sleeping out on trail. Now, our mission here on this channel is to help you increase your quality of life while you are out on trail. So hopefully we do that in this video. Let's go ahead and hop into mistake number one. The first mistake that a lot of people make is whenever they set their tent up for the first time, it's while they're out on trail. Now, the one I'm using is the Telos TR2 by Sea to Summit, and it's only got one pole, and it's even color coordinated where the grommets and the poles are supposed to meet. But a lot of tents aren't just one pole. They're very complicated to set up, and you need to be familiar with them before you head out on trail, because what if you get out there and you're in inclement weather or you're in a hurry and you need to set that tent up very quickly? You don't want to be trying to figure it out on trail. So go ahead and do it at the house before you leave. Set it up a few times until you get comfortable, and I think that'll help you out. Now, this tent I will link in the description if you want to check it out, and any other gear that we talk about during this video. Mistake number two, we got the tent set up, but what a lot of people do is they find a flat spot to put the tent. It's not necessarily level. So here's a little tip for you, I'll show you. This is just a water bottle that I bring with me backpacking, but if you notice, it's got an air bubble in it. You can use that air bubble as a level, and then you can use the ground. You want a flat and level spot. So if I put this down, you can see it's not perfect, of course. This is just rudimentary, but the bubble's floated this way, which means the ground's sloping. You can check it up and down, left and right to find you a good spot. Just something quick and easy to try whenever you get to camp if you got a full bottle of water. If you look around me, there are a bunch of trees that I'm setting up with, and that is great. It's a perfect camping location, but if you look up, you could find that there's a widowmaker up there. Now, what these are just a hanging branch that could fall and hurt you in the middle of the night. Maybe a storm rolls in, maybe there's a big gust of wind. That's bad news for you. So be aware of all your surroundings, not just on the ground, but looking up as well before you set up your tent in that location. Mistake number four. Now, depending on the time of year, this is gonna be a little bit harder because, as you can see, there's a bunch of leaves out here. But what you wanna do is, before you set up, look around on the ground and make sure you're not setting up on any roots or limbs that are laying there, rocks, anything pokey that's gonna be uncomfortable. You may be okay with a little bit because your pad's gonna help you, but you definitely don't want to tear a hole in the bottom of that nice new tent that you purchased. Speaking of tearing a hole in the bottom of your tent, this brings me to mistake number five. That is, if your tent doesn't come with a ground sheet, which is basically a protective layer that goes under your tent, you can use something like a piece of polycro, or in this case, Tyvek. They use this a lot on houses. You can find it at a construction site and maybe ask, hey, are y'all throwing any of that away? And this will be nice and thick enough for you to put down under your tent. Now, a little tip for you. You want to cut it to size, okay? And you get a big piece, you want to cut, I don't know, maybe an inch or two away from the corner, all the way around the bottom of your tent. And what that'll do is prevent water from getting on the Tyvek and rolling under your tent. That is the absolute last thing that you want. Now, what I'm doing here is trying to avoid mistake number six. And this is called a Rainfly, and it actually cinches down on top of my tent and keeps bad weather out. Now, if you check this out, every seam is sewn together, the pieces of fabric, and it may be hard to see, but they are all seam taped. Now, what a lot of manufacturers will do is they will seam seal these. They'll either paint it with a kind of rubber coating to keep water from dripping through the seams, or they will use seam tape like this manufacturer does, Sea to Summit. Now, the mistake is not checking ahead of time to make sure that your tent is seam sealed. Some companies, they'll make you pay a little bit extra if you don't want to seam seal it yourself, which I would suggest you do. Usually it's like 25, 30 bucks extra. You can really make a mess trying to do this yourself, but by all means, if you're into that kind of thing, you can absolutely do it. But if you make the mistake of buying one that's not seam sealed and you take it out in bad weather, well, you can definitely catch yourself up in a bad situation, because then you have water or snow melting and water dripping through your Rainfly. So try to avoid that mistake for sure. That could really cost you because you get hypothermia. Mistake number seven. I used to do this a lot whenever I was car camping, because I thought, the weight of all of my stuff inside the tent should keep the tent fine. But I didn't stake it down. And that is a big mistake, especially if it's gonna get a little windy. Okay, if it gets windy, your tent might take off on you. So my tent, it actually comes with stakes. If yours doesn't, you can, I'll link some in the description for you to check out. The MSR mini groundhogs work great, but make sure that you stake your tent down, at least in the 4-foot corners. I think that could save you a lot of trouble. Now, if you've enjoyed the video, make sure you give me one of these, subscribe to the channel, and kick the notification bell for the latest notifications. We'll see you in the next one.